If you're a builder, remodeler, trade partner, architect, designer looking to grow your business, expand your network, and learn from some of the best minds in the industry, then you need to be at the Contractor Coalition Summit. It will be held November 6th through 9th in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is not your typical conference. The Contractor Coalition Summit is built around real conversations, real relationships, and real strategies that you can take back and implement immediately. You'll connect with top-performing contractors from across the country, hear from industry leaders, and gain insights on leadership, operations, sales, marketing, culture, profitability, and AI. Whether you're looking to scale your business, improve your systems, or simply surround yourself with people who are pushing the industry forward, this event is for you. We will see you November 6th through 9th, Charlotte, North Carolina. Go to www.contractorcoalitionsummit.com and register and sign up.
Having a process is important. Implementing it, even if it's not 100%, is also important. And then improving upon it and instilling in each employee why that part of the process is so important.
No, I actually wish I edited myself, right? So, thankfully, Ben, when I started the podcast, as we get right into this, I for the first year, I actually was editing myself, and I was doing it through through the guitar. What's it called? The here on the GarageBand, on the Mac, yeah, for the first year, and then now, thankfully, I have a producer that's helping me. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be this good.
Well, that's good. They turn out really well.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm super excited. So we have Ben Tarwater on today, and Ben is the Chief Operating Officer for Bickimer Homes in Kansas City. And Ben and I go way back. So I'm really excited to get this episode rolling. Maybe we should give a brief history of, our background before we kick into this.
Of my background or our background?
I think our background and then maybe yours.
Okay. Well, I love home building. It's a passion of mine. Wherever I go vacation, where my wife and I go, Sherry and I, if we go on vacation, we're looking at homes. And that's something we've been doing for 30 years. We've been in this business for 30 years. And we just love it so much that that's just what we do for vacation. And we happened to buy a home in the Scottsdale area during COVID. And I'd followed Brad, you prior to that, and wanted to see some product. Turned out that we had a mutual friend that set us up and met at a house one time back in 2021. And I'll get this story wrong, but kind of as I told it is, hey, if I retire someday, I want to come down and just do warranty for you. And that snowballed pretty quickly. I came down for the Super Bowl and we met again, and one thing led to another, and I came to work for you. And I've been extremely fortunate over my 30 years to have really 4 mentors. One great mentor that got me started in this business, and then you, and then my second and longest employer, Jim Ingle. So I relished the time that I had there, and we have family here now, and that brought us back to Kansas City for the next few years, and then we'll see where we go from there.
I love that background because Ben, and as Ben mentioned, you had an incredible professional career on Kansas City for many years. I mean, you have a tremendous amount of experience. Cardinal Crest, who's our mutual friend, Joe and Adam, who a lot of people may know, said, they're like, Ben's like the best guy in Kansas City. Like he dominates the entire market out there. And, I felt super privileged and just the background, and it's pretty neat. My perspective, when you came out and I'm like, Ben, we need to make this happen. I need to get you out to Scottsdale. We were taking over one of our, biggest projects we had done to date. And it was a project where, there was a lot of complications from just, a lot of things that had happened prior to us. I mean, we weren't part of it, but a different builder, their experience. And I specifically remember the client telling me early on, they were pretty disgruntled, as you can imagine, for the amount of money and time they had spent into this thing. And he's just like, Brad, I have so much PTSD. I want nothing to do with this house. I just, I want to sell it. I want to get rid of it. And And Ben comes in and, really had to reconstruct this entire building. It was not a small home. I mean, this is a massive home. And
Understood.
yeah, and Ben came out in May, which is the worst time to come to Phoenix. And you're working all summer, just grinding all day on that job site, tearing the house apart, is at frame stage, rebuilding it, getting it to the point the following year that we were able to take it to the finish line. And I truly believe, Ben, I don't think there's any other person that could have did what you did to get it to that point. So, I thank you tremendously for all that you did.
Well, no thanks needed, and the thanks goes in reverse as well. I'm appreciative of the kind words, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity, and would do it again in a heartbeat. To kind of just go back a little bit, my first mentor, his name was Randy McKittrick, and he taught me the sticks and bricks. I think this person knew more about construction than anyone I will probably ever come across. I mean, he was born into it, he lived it, he breathed it, and we would work out of his basement the first 7 years of my career, or for the most part, the first 7 years of my career. And he literally taught me, if you've got 12 foot of 2x10s here, these are A's. And if you've got 14 foot here, these are B's. I mean, estimating down to the nail, literally. Then my second and longest employer, Jim, I think that he just taught me open up and here's some freedom. And he allowed me, and I've had tons of help along the way, so it certainly isn't me. But he allowed me the freedom to kind of flourish and learn, develop plans and merchandising houses in sales, and then the processes and all that too. You just said, here, just do it. And I'll be forever grateful for that. And then you opened up a whole different world for me, because I've had lots of things that I've wanted to do over the years, but due to market constraints or just financial reasons, they just weren't technically feasible. And that project, and you in particular, allowed me to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And if it had been any other project that you would have had down there, I don't think we would have been able to do that. That kind of stuff. And that goes to the exterior envelope and all the fun stuff that we did, that shows you this is how you build a home and build it right, and testing out things. So I'm forever grateful. And my joke that I've kind of said to you about my time with you is, you are the most positive home builder I've ever come across in my career. And I've come across a lot in 30 years. And that is nothing but the ultimate compliment. Is this business is tough, and you come across a lot of tough things. And even I was pushing on you hard that here's some things that we should and shouldn't do. And you're like, no, I know what we're going to do, and you need to understand that and follow it. And you were 100% right, and I was not always right. So thank you for teaching me a few things that I still need to learn in my old age.
The funny thing is, I think sometimes we're better lucky than good. Sometimes even when I know we won't get into it on the podcast, but a couple of specific things Ben and I talked about, I think I'd leave those conversations and I'm like, am I making the right decision? But I think that's
I
life.
think it turned out well either way,
Yeah.
but you made the right decisions. You can't question that for sure.
Well, what's interesting as we get into this, Ben, I think what's really important is, and this is feedback from your peers. I know a lot of your peers in Kansas City, and the one thing they say about Ben, they're like, Ben has an ability, uh, you think systems, organization, you mentioned merchandising, home sales, like you've taken these companies that are, I don't want to say small producers, but they're in business, they're doing work, and you've multiplied them by 2, 3, 4, 5x. Over the years, what have you learned about sales? How, because one thing that's unique, you mentioned you travel a lot with Sherry, your wife. And so, she has a design aspect to her and creativity. You have, an operations and building side. How has that merged over the years to be so successful?
I think that it goes back to really the word passion. We just have we just have a real passion for what we do. And for lack of a better way of putting it, I was given the opportunity to learn the construction side of it, and then was given the opportunity to say, okay, let's take that and what can we learn from here in Kansas City, at least, what can we learn when we travel to these markets and we look at homes that are 5 times, 10 times, 20 times the price of the homes we're building? What features could we take out of those and implement them into the homes that we're building here in Kansas City? And I think that's probably what set us apart just a little bit in the initial stages, that we were doing things such as prep kitchens in homes that were at the time under $1 million here in Kansas City. And they may be small, but they were something that was just a little bit different. Um, Private bathrooms, lofts, all these things that we kind of take for granted now, they weren't always the case. For one other instance is just the main floor master bedroom. Here in Kansas City, we were dominated by 2-story homes. And in 2010, I bet 80% to 90% of the new home market was 2 stories, which is, we call a 2-story a home that has the master bedroom on the second floor, not the main floor. And we had a plan that had a master bedroom on the main floor. And by 2012, that had become one of our model homes. And then a smaller version had become a model home. And by 2014, I think we were 95% story and a half, which is main floor master. Second floor has some extra bedrooms, loft, etc. And at the time, we were still one of the few that were doing that. And that really elevated us to a whole different level. And the thinking was, well, the pool of buyers for a home that has a bedroom on the main floor is just greater, because you could literally age in place. You could be there and you could raise your family. You might have a second bedroom that you could have infants in if you wanted them to be on the main floor. But as we all know, that stage where they're truly infants is a short period of time, and then they can move up to the second floor and have their own space. And I think that was a really good thing for us that set us apart. But to your comment about sales, I know that I'm probably a salesperson. I've just never considered myself one. When I sit down with somebody, I am truly there just to provide information to them about what we have and what we offer. And that is, here's the plan. Here's what these things cost to do as options. Here's the process. Here's our warranty. And it's really more about the relationship you build with them. I'm not going to sell you anything. And in fact, I'm going to tell you, because I've built 9 homes personally for me and our family, I'm going to show you the things that I've done to save costs. Some people will say, "Oh, I want to add cabinetry to the master closet with drawers and all that." I said, "You can do that when you get the cabinet maker involved, and I'm happy to do it, but just know that that's going to cost more than if you have the trim carpenter, etc." And things may change a little bit. It may not fit them and they want to spend the money on cabinetry. But if you take my advice, maybe you can just leave an opening in your shelving in your master closet, and you can go and have a dresser that you may already own, or you can buy one at a store and it slides right in there. And if and when you move, you can pull that back out and use it somewhere else and save yourself some money, and kind of future-proof your closet as well. So little things like that I've taken as they're just information. And I think people don't want to be sold. I know I don't want to be sold. And the moment I think I am being sold, I'm the kind of person that shuts down. If I want it, I want it. I don't want somebody to tell me I want it, I guess.
I love that you brought it back to that, Ben, because I think there's, call it, the analogy of the used car salesman, that greasy salesman. No one wants to feel pressured in that. But I've seen the most successful people at sales, such as yourself, Ben, is there are two things you brought up. One was experience, and the other was passion. And so what happens is if you have a ton of experience, as you do in building, you can present options to the client in a certain way, because you've built on that. You have the experience. And then because you have such passion for the industry, it's contagious. And so I've seen people that are very successful in sales they have passion, they have experience, they have knowledge of the topic or the brand or the product or whatever they're selling. And that's the buy-in, right? Because
Yeah.
and that's where confidence driven. The more confident you are, the better you are going to be at sales. Well, where does that confidence come from? It comes from experience and passion.
Yeah, definitely being able to fall back on things that I've come across during building homes myself. The other thing is that we've been fortunate enough to live in a lot of the communities that we built in,
Hmm.
and most builders don't want to do that because you don't want somebody to knock on your door. And we have been fortunate that there's really only been one instance where somebody has knocked on the door and I've had to say, can we table this until Monday because it's not anything urgent. But for the most part, people have been great. And I've grown up with all of these people and all of their kids, and we eat at the same restaurants and things like that. Uh, to bring the human element back into it, we've always kind of donated to things that are in our community. And one is we've got a young family that built with us a long time ago, and their daughter ended up having eye cancer. And we've donated to their golf tournament and been involved in their golf tournament for each of the past, I think, 10, 11 years now. And that's coming up in here in June. But they're homeowners, and we want to support that cause because it's something that's in our neighborhood and is important to us. Another one is we had a family that their son got hurt in an accident and became wheelchair bound, and we retrofitted one of our homes to allow them to be able to move into it so that he could have access to a shower and things like that. Just little things like that we try to do. And we do go out and we eat out often, and we see our customers out there. And I've always made it a point, if one of our customers is in the restaurant and we're eating dinner, I will get their check. I'll tell the waiter, I'd like to have their check. I want to take care of it. Because that
Hmm.
that element of saying we're a family and I want to take care of them because they've provided business for me and for my family and for the employees of our companies, that goes a long way. And that type of word of mouth and that type of positive interaction with somebody you do business with will go a long way.
That's a good example, Ben, because as you were sharing this stuff, we often reflect about our own career, right? Why did certain projects go south? Why did certain things go the way they did? And what I found is, yes, I mean, on occasion you're going to have a difficult client, maybe unrealistic expectations, but really what it comes down to is poor communication and poor expectations. Us not setting them or communicating them. But really, what I've seen is it comes down to that human element. That relationship gets broken, and you see in any field, especially the medical field. Why are some people in medical field do so well and have little malpractice lawsuits? Well, it's because of human element. They have great bedside manner, and so you think about if we have good bedside manner, if we have good communication, if you to your point, living in the community, you see a client at dinner, something I've never thought of, which does happen to all of us. Like, let me pick up their tab. I mean, it's something pretty inconsequential, small, but it's such a kind gesture that, just to your point, you're looking for ways to build that emotional bank account with your customers. And, that's low hanging fruit to do that.
Absolutely. You just touched on something about the medical field, and we just happen to be going through something where we have a family member that is hospitalized right now. And yes, as an outsider, you're very quick to want to uh, judge. And I, because I think I'm in this business, I'm slower to judge, at least externally. Internally, my brain is going process, 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 and communication. And when you don't see it, especially in a hospital setting, I think, because you're so vulnerable, uh, it really stands out. We just had an instance this weekend, and I walked away going, she said something, and yet she didn't follow up to say, here's what I said before, here's what's actually happening, and here's what's going to happen in a few minutes. And it just reinforces what we have to do, because yes, when you're in the hospital, you're vulnerable, but our customers as home buyers are vulnerable too. They have a lot more information than they've ever had, some good and some not so
Hmm.
good, but they do have a lot of information, and it's our job to make sure that we communicate, over communicate the positives and negatives of the things that they may be seeing, reading, or hearing about the home building process. And to come back to your comment, everything fails based upon communication. I think if the communication is poor, it will fail, or any failure is usually due to communication. Maybe that's the better way to say it. Uh, I'm a I'm a huge process person. That was drilled into me by Randy, the first person I ever worked with, and it was one of those things where I learned so much about the process, that how do we make it and adapt to every single situation. And I'm in the business right now where we'll call semi-custom home building. And I look back, and I know that every company is different, and every segment of the industry is different. But if you took production home building, and then semi-custom home building, and then I'm going to call you luxury home building, and I may have that wrong, and you can correct me if you like. I feel like processes, people think, oh, well, processes is for the production home builder.
Hmm.
And it's for all of us, for sure. And it benefits all of us in many ways if we have them. And it will hurt you in many ways if you don't have them, no matter the segment you're in. Uh, I think it's tough as the semi-custom home builder, and this is just from my experience, is in the toughest of those three segments. And the reason is, we have to operate like the production builder because we're on such strict time constraints, and we carry loans for the customers in 95+% of the cases, so that we're paying the interest carry from
Hmm.
the time they go to contract to the time they move in. So we have to act like the production builder. But semi-custom, they don't hear the semi, they hear the custom, and they want anything and everything. And so we have to figure out a way to develop a process that allows us to let them customize, but helps keep them within our time frame that we've sold them the home and that we can make money at. And that's a tough thing to do. And if you don't have a process, it's virtually impossible to do and make money.
It's interesting, Ben, because there are a few points I was jotting down. I mean, you talked about, just from the medical field, the example you just went through. I think one of the most challenging things we have as builders is, like, you and I do this every day. You've been doing it for a long time, Ben. You have much more user experience than I do, but we've been doing it long enough that we assume the client understands the process or what's happening or next phase or sequence or whatever it may be, and they don't. And now I have clients, it's funny because I have clients, they'll look up what the schedule should be on ChatGPT, and they're sending it to me, right, on how these things should go. And the reality is, look, I think it's very important that all of us look at better ways to refine our processes, you're talking about, to refine our building schedules, to look at better methods, but at the same time, like, we do this. And so a lot of times we just assume that they know, and they don't. And it really comes down to this failure of communication. Even you gave the perfect example. You said, you're trying to, from a production mentality to a semi-custom, a lot of overlap is there. Maybe with semi-custom, you're going to allow a few changes, not all the changes they want, like maybe I would, but the customer doesn't understand that part, and you really have to set that precedence for them.
Sure. We definitely have to. And it starts with the sales process where you have to explain to them, here is what's happening during this stage of the process. I am here explaining to you the plan options that are available to you, meaning, do you want a story and a half? How big of a story and a half do you want? Would you rather have what we call a reverse story and a half, or would you rather have a 2-story home? And then what community do you want to be in? And what from there, then it's, once you're under contract, you work with our architectural designer to develop plans that are specific to the items that you put into your contract. And then once that's done, then we're going to go through the permitting process. And while the permitting process is happening, we're going to go out and survey the lot, put the stakes in the ground, and then we're going to submit for the permit once the engineer is done, the plans are done, and your survey is done. Well, to a customer, they're seeing that they're giving us a large chunk of money at contract. And really, they are involved in the plan process because we're developing plans for each one of them. But no activity is really happening on the lot, meaning the earth machine is not coming to start excavating until 90 and sometimes 120 days from contract to that point. So you have to make sure that you're communicating well. And I know you do weekly status updates. Yours are videos, and they're great because that keeps the customer involved. We don't have anything necessarily to video early on in most of the cases. So from the time that they go to contract, the person who sold them the home will give them a weekly update to update them what's going on with the plans. And then once they're in the plan stage, that same person who sold them and the architectural designer are going back and forth with the customer. And the moment the plans are done, we transfer to the project manager who's going to build the home. And they are going to start giving them weekly status updates. Usually engineering takes 3 to 4 weeks. We're in week 2 of engineering. You may have noticed this week that the lot was staked. How are your selections going? We know that your selections are due by the time the roof is on the home, and that may be 70 days away or 75 days away, but that time frame comes soon. So everybody in the company, we have to teach to communicate to keep the customer engaged, because it's easy for the customer to go, okay, I've got 75 days until my selections are due. I don't need to make any appointments with the vendors until 60 days from now. That still gives me 2 weeks plus time to get them done. Well, if they do that, then we're going to have an issue because they're not going to get them finalized in time. And then you have to go down the subject of the home being on hold and who's going to pay for the carrying costs that are being incurred because the home has to go on hold. We don't ever want to be in that position, and we don't want the customer to be in that position. So it's every person's job during the process to make sure they continue that communication and flow of communication, and just reinforce what is going on, and reinforce why everything that we're asking them to do is so important.
I love that, Ben, because as you're sharing that, setting these expectations early on, we just had a meeting last week with a new potential build. And what I've learned is, as you can imagine, I mean, you work for me, so you know some of the projects and clients we're working with. Things can go sideways really fast. And so what I learned was, we kind of have these like 4 or 5 points of, I don't want to say contention, but of things that like, I'd rather set the expectation now. So we had a quick Zoom call only because the client was out of town. Instead of doing it in person, we said, like, here's what we're excited about, but let's set the expectation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll give one simple example. You mentioned carrying costs. Well, you're carrying all those costs, Ben. So you're going to be very strategic on what that looks like from a building schedule and all that. But for us, the client typically is carrying that interest or debt. And so they're very conscious of like how we produce. And when you're doing a hillside build, there's going to be days that no one's on site. And it's not because we're mismanaged or because we don't know what we're doing, but on hillside work, it's pretty slow for that first year, right? I mean, you're between excavation and masonry and waterproofing and backfill, and there's cure time. So you have to wait for the walls to cure before you can backfill. And so we set the expectation. Here's what it'll be. There'll be days there's people not on site, but we understand that. We'll be giving you look aheads and so forth. I think for you, Ben, maybe to help the listener understand, I'm curious on how you set limits in semi-custom. That's something that's really curious to me, because maybe give a background of, from your model. I would imagine you have some base plans and the clients have a certain time frame to make changes. Do you cap the time that they can make changes throughout the build? And in addition to that, do you cap, can they do things structurally? Can they do things mechanically? Is it just, the cosmetic options? How do you structure this when you're carrying the brunt and the load of the costs and you're trying to finish these homes in a certain amount of time?
Yeah. So the answer is that a customer can do anything. And for the most part, they could do it at any point. But for them to enjoy the process and for us to enjoy the process as well, because we have employees that need to have lives, and for us to make money and for the home to be built in a reasonable time frame, there are parameters that history has told us work. And those are, you can pick one of our stock plans, or we can draw one up from scratch. We do full custom as well. But once the plans are done, we release them to go and make selections with the vendors. And the reason we do it at that time and not sooner is that if we were to say you're buying our standard plan of the Hamilton and we send you to start making selections, well, during the plan stage, they may add an entire different room to the second floor. They may expand the kitchen, 10 feet in one direction, which adds, 20 lineal feet of cabinetry or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we did that, they would go make selections, they would get incorrect pricing, they would be frustrated and things like that. So we wait until the plans are done. We send the plans to the vendors with the contract items and or contract overage allowances so they can go and make selections. As they're making their selections, we begin construction of the home. And then we have our first real big meeting. We have a pre-construction meeting when we kick things off. And then we have what's called a post-framing meeting as soon as the roof is on the home. The roof is the major deadline for 90% of the selections to be completed. All of your lighting, all of your appliances, your plumbing fixtures, your flooring, all of that. And the reason it's important to have all of that is that it's hard to get past mechanicals if you don't know what those things are. If we don't know what the light fixtures that they've selected are and where they're going, then we don't really know where to have the electrician wire things. We can wire per our base plan, but if they've selected 3 chandeliers for over the island and the standard plan only calls for 2, but we don't have their information, we're going to wire for 2. So it's important to make sure that they understand, okay, your selections are due at this time, and this is the importance of why it's due. Now, when we get to that post-framing meeting, someone can say, I did only pick out 2 fixtures for this island, but now that I'm standing here, I think I'd like to add a 3rd. Well, we can do that, and we'll do what's called a change order, or we will update our selections. I don't use change orders. I use the selection part of our portal. But we can do that, and the project manager will make a list of here are the electrical changes they made at the post-framing, and then they send it to the customer to make sure that they approve that and all the pricing, and then we go in and update their selection. So that's really the bulk of when all the selections are due. Now, each meeting we say is, this is the final time to make sure that before we move any further, you can make changes, even though things are due, it's still less expensive to make changes at this meeting than it would be for us to progress past this meeting and then you want to make the change. Probably the easiest example for people is if you wanted to make an electrical change, we have a pre-drywall meeting, and it's really just meant to say everything we talked about at the post-framing meeting is here, it's in. We just want to make sure that you're good with the placement per that meeting before we install drywall. It's not intended to be a time for you to change or add electrical, but again, it is less expensive if you want to do it now before drywall is installed than after insulation and drywall installed. And that does happen, but it's more rare because again, we've reinforced when things are due from the very beginning. And every person from sales to project manager to our selection coordinator, we call them, they're reinforcing it as well throughout the process.
I guess my question for you would be, from the outside looking in, of course, this is a dialed in approach, right? Because to your point, I mean, once the roof's done, yeah, you can't be making, structural or mechanical changes. How do you communicate that? I know, like, if I'm your client or prospective client, I'm coming in, okay, Ben, I'm going to build a house with you. And I understand my deadline's roofing, but I'm running my business. I have family stuff, whatever's going on, the normal day to day. How are you setting that from just a time frame? Because it's one thing to say the roof will be done, but at what point are you saying our roof's going to be done 90 days from now, 45 days? Like how dialed in are you from a scheduling perspective to know what that actual hard date is so that they can plan in their personal life and make sure they don't miss that deadline?
Well, we construct in the elements, and we have a lot of rain up here, especially in the spring, and we have snow, we have freezing temperatures. So we never really know. But history has told us, and we do have a schedule that says that once we're done with plans, we're probably 90 to 120 days away from having a roof on the home. Once we excavate, we update that to say we're probably 60 to 75 days away from having the roof on the home. From when we start framing, we say we're probably about 30 days away from having a roof on the home. So while not exact science, and those days may fluctuate a week here or there due to delays in the permitting process, or if we're excavating and it's below freezing all day long, we can't pour concrete. So we're going to lose days because we can't pour the foundation. Or if we start framing and it rains for days on end, then that's going to delay the framing portion of it. So we can't get the roof on. It's really not until the roof is on that the schedule becomes much more consistent and has fewer interruptions, let's say. Aside from, trades and vendors, the availability of them today is just not what it used to be. There are fewer of them. Each of them also have fewer people on site doing the work. So each trade takes a little bit longer. So while we have checkpoints, plans, permit, excavation, and frame start, it'll fluctuate a few days until that roof gets close. But we're sending them daily logs with pictures, weekly status updates. But again, that's what it is. We're week 2 of framing this week, and we probably have another 2 weeks left. We should actually have your selections at this point in our hands so we can reconcile them in Buildertrend, which is the portal we used.
What I do like about that, and of course things fluctuate with labor, they fluctuate with weather, but they're having multiple check-ins of what those expectations are, so they know that's coming down the pipeline of those decisions that have to be made. What do you find to be the biggest pain points of your team, with the clients that you're dealing with today?
Well, the biggest pain point is just going to be if you just follow the process. It's something as simple as you miss, as a project manager, sending that weekly status update. Inevitably, that's going to be the week that the customer has the most amount of questions, and they're going to go, I didn't get my weekly status update this week. So then now I'm going to question, is something happening with my home that I'm not aware of? Is that why I didn't get a status update? Or are they not managing my job site or all that? So making sure that everybody in the process understands that what may seem so small and inconsequential as, hey, this week we're doing this and next week we're going to do this. The moment that we don't do that, it it can leave doubt and put questions in the customer's mind, and that has a lasting effect. You mentioned emotional bank account earlier, and that's exactly what it does. Is I think for every debit you have, which is I didn't send my weekly status update, it's going to take 3 or 4 credits down the line to get that trust back. And it not always, but it certainly can. So that's probably the biggest thing is one, having a process is important. Implementing it, even if it's not 100%, is also important, equally as important. And then improving upon it and instilling in each employee why that part of the process is so important. Because their jobs will be easier if they just do those little things. And I think it's hard for people to understand how is something like that really that important? And it isn't until you're a consumer of something of this size and scale, and these homes are costly, that you realize, okay, that makes sense. And it could be go buy a car. And if someone's walking through the process and they have no communication skills or whatsoever, you're not going to enjoy it. Well, now 20x that to the average home here, someone's spending 800, a million, $2 million. Uh, they expect a level of service. And I think the bare minimum is a weekly update to suffice.
Because I know this is something you and I have spoken about before, because the problem is, I think in any relationship, specifically home building, clients that are, whether they're building a custom home, whether they're doing a semi-custom, this is a large expense, typically one of the biggest expenses over half. And so they're very engaged. And of course, all of them come from different backgrounds, whether they're knowledge of the industry, if they built before, they come from, but regardless of their home building experience, we'll say, they're still highly successful in their fields, right? And so a lot of them understand project management. They understand communication, timelines, deadlines, operations, hiring, systems, all these things, because that's what's led them to be in these positions. And what I found is that inherently clients, if we don't, you mentioned you have to have a process, but you have to understand how to implement that process. Because if you're not doing that, what ends up happening is our clients become micromanagers. That's their nature. And so what I found is, to that emotional bank account, if we continue to let them down or not communicate or put ourselves in a position, now they feel they have to take the reins. And once you get to that point, it is almost impossible to get those reins off. It's impossible to get control back, where, in essence, from a sports analogy, you're just playing defense the whole time. You can't ever get ahead, because you're constantly trying to either, I don't want to say justify, but really, explain to the customer why things are going the way they are, and as opposed to following your systems and now being dialed in.
Yeah. We had an instance just this weekend where, because we own the lot and we own the home and we carry the loan, we have insurance risks. So customers aren't allowed to be on the job site without one of our representatives, or if they're in a community that they're building in, the on-site sales representative can walk them through the job. And it's not because we don't want them there. It's because there is a risk. I have seen where people have walked right past a no trespassing sign in the yard, and they walk right past a no trespassing sign on the front door, and literally walk right past a no trespassing sign on a sliding door and fall through the deck.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that to happen. In this case, the customer came in, and it was Friday in the afternoon, and they sent us an email at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday to the PM, and I just happen to see everything that's in our portal because I am implementing these processes now. And they sent something that said, I just went in and took a sneak peek and I didn't see this, and it should have been here now. So they went into the home without one of us. It is a very tricky time. It was during the trim stage. So there's no stairs into the home from the garage, which is dangerous.
Mhm.
And they went in, they saw something, and then they questioned us and they sent the message to our project manager at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday, which is all fine and dandy. But if you're the project manager and you get that message at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday, do you answer it? Do you wait until Monday? What do
Mhm.
you do with that? And now you've stressed out that project manager. And the reality is, if they would not have gone in the home, they would have seen the finished product and would have never had a question. So they
Right.
created a struggle for themselves, and they created a struggle for our project manager and me because I read it. And that lasted all weekend. So now I feel compelled that I need to respond to them because I don't like to let something sit over the weekend because I don't want the customer to allow that curiosity or questioning to fester over a weekend. So I responded Friday night and just said, so and so has family time with his family this weekend. I want to make sure that he enjoys it. So I'm going to step in. I'm going to answer this question. But the process of what you're asking about is X goes in first, and then this goes in second. So all is good. And oh, by the way, please don't go in the home without us because it's very, very dangerous at this time. So just one instance of where if no one follows the process, you can create heartache for yourself that isn't even warranted or wasn't necessary. Just allow the process to happen, and the finished product will speak for itself.
I think that's my favorite comment because, the unfortunate thing, I mean, we brought up the medical field and you're going through some medical things with some family members. When they go back into the operating room, you're not in there. I mean, I'm not in there either,
No.
and unfortunately for us as builders, we're operating right in front of them. And to your point, you may have signs and processes and they break through those. And, not just from a life safety aspect, but also from a building side. There is a process, right? There are things, uh, and really, this is where sometimes it's really important we put ourselves in the shoes of our customer. Yeah, I remember early in my career, there was a drywall ding, right? And for me, I'm like, that's no big deal. Like this is when I was doing production, 20 years ago. I'm like, we'll go repair that. But the client in their mind thinks, I'm spending all this money on a new house. And now you've already like damaged it. Like I don't even want this house because of this drywall repair. And the reality is like, this is part of the process, but the clients don't understand that, right? And I had another client, when anyone that's hung drywall in a house, these houses come in all different shapes and sizes. These aren't cut sheets off a manufacturing line. So you're going to have waste. So he's going through the junkyard or through the pile saying, look at this waste, look at this big piece, this triangle. Why aren't you using this? I'm paying for all this. And, they didn't understand waste factor and we just laughed. But the reality is, at some point there's these minuscule parts we have to communicate and puts a lot of pressure, to you, Ben, to me, to anybody to set expectation with the clients over a 1, 2, 3 year process with so many different steps and aspects. And, and that's the reality. Like we just, in a way, have to understand what we're signing up for.
It is, and I think it has evolved so much since I started, since you started. I think one of the reasons that you and I said, let's do a podcast is from my experience, I think people understand production home builders, or they would know what a large national home builder is, and they know what a luxury home builder is, and they may or may not know what a semi-custom home builder is. And again, not everyone in the production or the luxury is going to operate this way because there are variables for each one. But my experience is in the production world, customers have to go and they make all of their selections before they ever start the home. And there are change orders, but they're few and far between in the production world typically. And in your luxury world, little things that I didn't know as much about until I was into it is that people are investing large amounts of money and time for 1-2 years prior to even coming to you in some cases. Hopefully, you get the opportunity to say, here's how we operate. We want you to have a designer. We want you to have an architect. Here are some recommendations and all that. But I witness sometimes that doesn't happen. That's a much tougher conversation to set expectations when you're handed a design book and plans versus when you can say, I suggest you interview these architects and these designers and pick one that you've got familiarity with. That level of understanding of what you're going to get handed back to you is much greater, much easier for you. The customer will have a better experience, etc. But the point of that was customers are making those design selections, architectural selections, and all that prior to coming to you. And I don't think people realize that. Us in this semi-custom world, I'm allowing them to make selections while the home is being built, which of those 3 segments, we're the only ones that do it. And oh, by the way, we're doing it in a condensed time frame, closer to production than to luxury. You couldn't do it or do it well without a process. So it's extremely important that we have it. We try and stick to it. You communicate the positives and the negatives about why to use it and what happens if you don't. Or these jobs would take twice as long, and the interest carry alone at the end would eat up any profit that a semi-custom builder has. So I think that's probably something that people don't think about is that, oh, I'm building a custom home. I just get to make changes all throughout. Yeah, you do, but they're costly.
Yeah.
Your selections and your things are done before we ever start the house. And custom doesn't mean I get to do it at my pace and however I want. I get to change everything I want. I guess technically it does, but it will cost a lot more than what you're typically doing in a luxury building.
It's funny you say that because, yeah, you can do whatever change, but there's a cost associated, and carrying costs are a lot more than people realize. And throughout your career, Ben, you gave the example of getting an email on a Friday night, and of course you handle that in the most professional way, and you want to table that and make sure they're not stewing on it. But technology's changed so much, because I'm sure when you started, even when I started, fax machines were kind of a thing. Maybe you had like a Nextel two-way walk radio, two-way talk radio. Do you feel it's for better or worse?
Well, I think the computer is definitely better. The fact that we have a portal that allows us to build a critical path schedule that if something changes, I can slide a bar or I can change a number in a box and everything that I've attached behind it slides with it. That is light years ahead of either the handwritten tablet that I'd have to turn a page and then rewrite the entire schedule or the Excel where it was great, but I still had to copy or cut and paste from cell to cell, and it inevitably never looks like the original schedule that I started. So in that respect, it is much better. From the customer information standpoint, I think it is better because, to your point, most of our clients we're in the 800,000 to $2+ million, but the bulk of our homes are in the $1.5 million range, which means they're typically professional people. They're doing something at a level that both you and I are doing, but just in a different industry typically. So most of those people are understanding, but for the ones that aren't, the computer can always be a bad thing. It's no different than medical or anything else. If you start going down the Google or now Chat GPT or Claude rabbit hole of what is wrong with me physically because I've got these symptoms, you could find some information that's not good. And similarly in home building, I think that people want to add something custom to their home. So they go to the internet and they say, this is great. And they'll send it to us and say, I'd like to get a price for this tub or these plumbing fixtures. Well, we then have to send it to our plumber and say, how much are these fixtures for this customer? And it may come back that it's $175. Well, the customer says, well, I see it at plumbingfixtures.com for $120. Well, we just do that. And the short answer is, well, no, because typically if it's $120, it would be that it's a closeout or you have to buy it now, but we don't need plumbing for another 5 months. Who's going to warehouse that product? And even if all of that is not the case, a local plumbing warehouse doesn't have the buying power that Lowe's, Home Depot, or big box retailers have. And while that's maybe hard for a customer to understand, I should still get the lowest price one possible, we have to keep reiterating, I understand that, but we don't have that buying power. And if I buy it from Lowe's or Home Depot, I have to now bring it into a warehouse, which I don't have, and set it there for 4 months, hope it doesn't get damaged, lost, stolen, whatever the case may be, and then deliver it to your job site and then install it. And then I don't have any recourse against that big box retailer if there are parts, pieces missing, or if there's a warranty issue. If you buy it through our vendor, you've got all of that protection. And that will help 99% of the case. But ultimately, people want things at the best price they can get. And sometimes it just isn't that simple. So you have to be it. As a home builder, you know this, we're not experts in framing per se, and we're not experts in electrical, but we have to be experts in all of it and the process to be able to explain why something that looks so good on the internet isn't possible to do or isn't really feasible. And it's hard for, I think, for people to understand. That's probably been the biggest change from their point is they think they've got information that says I can do this. And we have to say, it does look really good on the internet. Unfortunately, this is why it doesn't work in your instance.
It's funny how we have to deal with that, right? And it's, all over social media, TikTok, you see these explanations. There's a builder, my builder 20, who just said, in his career, he was building for a doctor, and the doctor's like, I'm going to buy the appliances myself, and then, have them shipped. And he's like, okay, I'm going to come get filler from you, and I'm going to bring my own filler. You just do the, do the actual injection or whatever. And the doctor's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's funny, we don't go to a restaurant and say, we're going to bring in, I got this steak at Costco. It's a lot cheaper than, the $70 one on your menu. Just how did your cooks grill it up for me, in the back? It's just, we deal with these, but the reality is it's not just about, to your point, markup or profitability. I mean, the reality is, at the end of the day, you and I, our tail gets long. We're warranting these projects. We're trying to create a customer experience. Having your relationship with your plumbing company is much different than buying something on Amazon when it doesn't work, and who's going to warranty and pay the labor. And there's just so many different elements to that. But Ben, I probably should have booked you for 2 hours, to be honest, because I think we're going to have to bring you back. You and I, there's probably 20 things I wanted to ask you. We didn't get to one of them. I was going to talk a little bit more about your operation, which we'll do on I guess, podcast too. But what keeps you up at night?
I think when a process is lacking or if someone doesn't follow it, that's what keeps me up at night. I will think, how could I have taught that better? How could I have implemented that process better? What are we missing that would make the experience for the customer better? I think when I first got into this business, I was solely focused on what can we do as builders to make the building process better. And because I've done that so long now, it is completely shifted into what can we do as a builder to make the process better for our internal employees and our customers. And it's really hard because you have the human element to it, and I forget lots of things. And that's why I feel like I need a process, because if I follow each step, then the likelihood of me missing something goes down dramatically. And I think it's important that I keep reiterating that to all the others that I come across in this business, because that's what will serve them well. It's what served me well. Is I feel like I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. And if I don't, most of the time I'm going to get to you before you get to me and say, I apologize, I don't have the answer. I'm still working on it, and I'll get back to you. And I think if you use that throughout life, it will serve you well.
I love that. No, that's awesome, Ben. What do you do for fun?
Love the outdoors. That was one of the reasons why I loved living in Arizona so much, being able to walk out my front door and hike up Pinnacle Peak, or get on my mountain bike and hit the trails. So I love being outdoors. My kids are now out of college, so they are a huge part of my life is kind of friends. And that was one of the other reasons we decided to come back to Kansas City. Was my son wanted to be in this business, and he now works for me, and I'm trying to teach him how this business operates and how to be a good estimator and learn the building process. We built a home over the last year for a customer, and it was the first time he'd seen one go from start to finish, because he really didn't have much interest. As a younger kid, he got one. He got that bug when he was in college. So that's what I enjoy doing now, is family and then the outdoors.
I love that, the legacy side. And for anyone that doesn't know, Ben is a tremendous outdoor athlete. So when you say outdoors, you are extremely active, one of the most active. And it doesn't even matter if it's 120 out, you don't care.
No, I like the heat. I can take the heat.
Well, Ben, you've been incredible. Appreciate the friendship coming on today. Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me at Ben Tarwater on Instagram if you like. And then our website is bickimerhomes.com. And then we have a Instagram and Facebook page as well. But Ben Tarwater is where I post all my personal stuff and professional stuff. So you can find me there.
Well, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it. Great seeing you.